and welcome to another video to teach you about the wonderful world of Latin. Today's video will teach you about demonstrative adjectives and pronouns. These are a special kind of adjective that can function like a pronoun. So first we will talk about them as an adjective, and then we will talk about them as a pronoun. So let's first start with a review of adjectives. An adjective is a word that describes a noun. In Latin, an adjective will have the same gender, number, and case as the noun it modifies. It takes those three qualities, that gender, number, and case, from the noun that it modifies. So, what's a demonstrative adjective? A demonstrative adjective helps the speaker point to something specific. The word demonstrative, in fact, is a derivative from the Latin verb demonstro, demonstrare, to point out. So, for example, if we wanted to point out this warship, we would use a demonstrative adjective, like this arrow here. In fact, with a lot of speakers, when we have a script of their speech, we imagine them actually pointing when they use a demonstrative adjective. So, what are examples of these? In English, the demonstrative adjectives are this, and in the plural, these, that, and the plural, those. And there's another one that Latin has that English doesn't really have. We translate it as that one of yours or those of yours. The Latin translations for these are hic haec hoc is this or these, ille illa illud is that or those, and iste ista istud means that one of yours. Now, just like all the other adjectives, hic haec hoc, ille illa illud, and iste ista istud are the masculine, feminine, and neuter nominative singular forms. We'll have to learn all the other forms of these adjectives in order to use them. So let's look at this a bit more visually to help us understand it a little bit better. So like I said, a demonstrative helps a speaker point things out. So here's a nice statue of an ancient Roman speaker. He has his hand raised like he's speaking. So to help us remember he's speaking, let's give him a speech bubble. And he's usually speaking to people, so let's give him an audience. Here's a statue of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who our orator will be speaking to. Notice Marcus Aurelius also has that orator's pose. So if our speaker wanted to point to something near him, like a chicken, he'd say in English, this chicken. If he wanted to point to something far away from both himself and Marcus Aurelius, he'd point out like that warship, that one way over there, far away from us. And then if he were using Latin and wanted to point out something belonging to Marcus Aurelius, he'd say, that horse of yours, since it's what Marcus Aurelius is writing. So if we wanted to translate these all into Latin, for this chicken, our orator friend would use hic haec hoc. For that warship way over there, he'd use ille illa illud. And for that horse of yours, he would use iste ista istud. So what are the forms of all of these? Well, here they are. Make sure you copy all of these down. You'll notice for hic haec hoc that in the singular, most of the forms have a C. This comes from an old form, CE, that is sometimes attached to the end of words to add pointing force. That if we wanted to point out a man, we'd say virke. And over time, the CE just got shortened to a C on this demonstrative adjective. That ending is not in the plural except for our neuter, nominative, and accusative plural. Once you have all of these copied out, resume the video for the forms of our next demonstrative. Okay, the forms of ille, illa, illude are pretty similar to our first and second declension adjectives. The only difference here is that the genitive singular has that ius form. This is like huius for hic, haec, hoc. And the dative has illi instead of illo or illi, like we'd expect with other with other first and second declension adjectives. So make sure you note that those two cases in number, the genitive and dative singular, are a little bit different than what you'd expect, but otherwise they're generally the same as first and second declension adjectives. Once you've copied all of these down, you can resume the video. Okay, our last one, este, esta, estud. These forms are very similar to the forms of ille, illa, illude. Most of them are like your first and second declension adjectives, and your genitive has that ius ending, illius, istius, and your dative has that I, illi, 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 and isti, isti, isti. So once you've copied all of these down, we will look at how we use these. Okay, so I know we threw a lot of forms at you here. So remember, an adjective modifies a noun. So we know most of our noun endings for these already. So how do we parse these? Pause the video and show how much you already know. Okay, so hopefully you've realized that even though we've thrown a lot of forms at you, you already know a lot of them. You know that isti puero is dative singular masculine. Istis portis is ablative plural feminine. Illi puelli has to be dative singular feminine because that AE has a lot of options, but that I on illi can only be dative singular. So it helps eliminate different options. So here, the confusion's actually very helpful. Illud donum would be neuter accusative singular. Haec dona would be neuter plural nominative or accusative. Istam feminam will be accusative singular feminine, and he weary will be nominative plural masculine. Notice that this cannot be genitive singular because the he has to be plural. If it were singular, it would be huius. Let's talk about demonstrative adjectives as pronouns. A demonstrative adjective can function like a pronoun when it is a substantive. So what does that mean? Let's unpack that. First, a pronoun replaces a noun. This noun is called the antecedent, so whatever noun is being replaced. It comes before the pronoun, and the pronoun is continuing on to talk about it. And a substantive adjective is an adjective that acts like a noun because the author gave it substance. That is, the author turned the adjective into an idea because it's not modifying any other noun. For example, in the sentence at the top of the slide, substantive is a substantive adjective. It's not modifying the word adjective. It has that substance that a noun would have. So how does this work with demonstrative adjectives in Latin? Let's look at the sentence hic dona puellae dat. First, let's parse everything to make it make sense. We know hic is nominative singular masculine, dona is accusative plural neuter, and puellae is dative singular feminine. Hic does not modify any noun. It is standing in for itself. It doesn't modify something. So it's going to be a pronoun. It is getting substance from our author. So when we translate it, we still use the meaning of hic, haec, hoc. This. If we want to say what this is, we can go off of the singular masculine qualities of hic and say this man, or just this. So this man, or this, gives gifts to the girl. We translate the rest of the sentence totally normally. But we know that hic is functioning like a pronoun. It has substance of its own. So one more thing before you practice for yourself. Demonstratives can have other connotations, other meanings depending on their context. If ille and hic are being used together to refer to things earlier on, ille can mean the former because it's further away from the word in the sentence, and hic can be the latter because it's closer to wherever you are in the sentence as you're reading. Ille can mean the famous one, and ista estud can be that despicable one or that despicable thing. And that despicable one is actually a pretty common meaning for ista estud. The other two connotations are a little bit less common. So now it's your turn to check your understanding. First, use this painting of Cicero's speech against Catiline to see if you understand the meaning of our demonstrative adjectives. Identify what is the translation of this scroll, that despicable plan of yours, and those men abandoning you. Next, parse the noun and adjective pair, and then translate the sentence. Once you've done these tasks, please call me over. I'll check your work and then tell you your homework. Thank you for watching this video and learning about the wonderful world of Latin.